Mic's on? They are on. All right. Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Genoa Township Board of Trustees meeting. It's a regular trustee meeting. Today's date is September 21st, 2022. A full and accurate account of this meeting's audio recording can be found at www.genoatwp.com. I called this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. This time I'll ask Donna Batten to call a roll.
Trustee Vaughn.
Yes,
Trustee
here.
Antonetts.
Here.
Trustee Goodman.
Here. Very good, thank you. Also present, we have Donna Batten, our Assistant Fiscal Officer, for filling in for Pat Meyer. Our Police Chief, Steve Gamble, our Director of Human Resources, Linda Greco, Director of Road and Buildings and Ground, Bob Matthews, Fire Chief, Joe Ponzi, Director of Zoning and Development, Joe Schaefer, and our Township Administrator, Paul Wise. Tonight, we have a special guest, Vinny Stocco. He is in attendance in the audience this evening to earn a Boy Scout badge. So I'm going to ask him if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Vinny. All right, time for our fiscal officer report. I'll turn it over to Donna.
Okay, good evening, Board. First item on our agenda are the approval of trustee meeting minutes. First meeting is the regular meeting held August the 4th, and our second set of minutes is the special meeting held August the 9th.
I'll move to approve the August 4th, 2022 regular trustee meeting minutes and the August 9th, 2022 special trustee meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Okay, moving on. If I could get you guys to sign those. I'll just pass them down whenever you can. Thank you. Second item for the evening is the July bank reconciliation. Balances are have been balanced at $24,711,536.07. Of that balance, the primary account sits at $3,285,268. Our investments with Fifth Third Bank are at $19,163,418. And Star Ohio Investments balance is $2,262,848.52. We had one outstanding issue. We are waiting on a claim. The money came in before the payment went out, so I have to hold that as an outstanding. That's all I have for the July bank rec. If I can get you guys to sign that as well. And the last item for the fiscal, we had received our Schedule A for 2023. On Tuesday evening, myself, Fiscal Officer Myers, and Township Administrator Paul Wise met with the Delaware County Budget Commission. They had wanted a brief explanation of the township carryover balances within our general fund, our police fund, and fire fund. After a very brief presentation between the three of us, they approved our Schedule A. So this evening, I'm asking that you accept our amounts and rates for 2023, and it'll begin the budget process for the rest of the departments.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. I'll move to pass a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
One quick note, all of the levies were, I guess, renewed at the voted millage. There was no reduction in millage for any of our levies.
Very good. Thank you, Donna. Roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts? Yes. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes. Motion carries.
And I believe that's all we have for the fiscal office. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next I will open it up to public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to trustee comments. Anyone?
I have one this evening.
We've had comments recently about the amount of traffic, specifically at the corner of Big Walnut and State Route 3. I have personally experienced that waiting through 3 left turn lights the other morning. And so I've asked Mr. Wise to draft an REA, thank you, asking the state and the county, whomever the appropriate parties are, to do a study as to whether a left turn signal would be warranted at that corner to help facilitate traffic. And I do realize that right now we've got a little more traffic because of the detour off of Worthington Road. But I don't think that's the biggest problem there. It's that it's a busy corner. So I'm hoping that my fellow trustees will agree with that assessment and join me in asking the state for that.
Very good.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Thank you. Mark, you have
I have
anything?
anything, no.
I have a few things. On that note, I also am requesting an REA to have the county do a traffic study on Big Walnut Road, specifically between Old 3 and, I don't remember the street. It's the street on Medallion Drive towards Sunbury. Yeah. Yeah, looking at the intersection specifically of Big Walnut and Tussock and Big Walnut and Old 3. Just to look at the speed limit. Also, I just want to give kudos to Pat Meyer, but he's not here. I ran into Don Kenny, our county treasurer, and he was telling me how great Genoa Township is doing financially. And I knew that before I was elected, but I just feel like all departments are really good at watching their spending. So I just want to thank everyone and relay that message that they're noticing us at the county.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes. Also, the Delaware County Township Association is going to be offering township residents $1 off the county fair. The county fair starts Saturday, September 17th. So be looking for that. Leslie's going to start pushing that sometime next week. And also, my monthly residence hour is going to be at McNamara Park on October 24th. That's a Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m. I believe that's all I have. Next, I'll turn it over to Joe Schaefer for zoning.
Thank you, Trustee Vaughn. This evening, I have 3 items on your agenda. However, the board may want to move a couple around because I think the first item and the third item might be somewhat related to one another. The first item being continued discussion regarding the legal RFQ. We have with us this evening Peter Griggs from Brocious Johnson and Griggs, as the board requested. And then the third item is the Hoover Watershed Overlay. And a lot of the legal RFQ sort of springboarded out of the discussion over the overlay. So perhaps it makes sense to do those one after another. My advice being that if you do start talking about the overlay before we get into it, that you actually go through the formal process of opening the hearing so we can ensure that any of that discussion and testimony is on the record for the overlay. So Mr. Griggs is here sitting in the audience, so I think he's ready to speak at any time.
Yeah. All right, very good. Yeah, you're welcome to come up to the microphone.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Well, what do you want to know?
Joe, I think just to be safe, I think we should open up the overlay hearing.
Yeah,
And that would free us up to speak with Pete plus talk about the overlay?
Yeah, I think a lot of those topics are going to be
Right.
very
Yes.
intertwined, so probably not a bad idea. I believe you should have a separate script document for that portion of the meeting,
Maybe.
just because it was a little long, just put in the regular script.
Yes, we have it. All right, I will call that meeting to order. At this time, I'll call to order the Genoa Township Boards of Trustee zoning meeting, case number ZC 201-04, zoning text map amendment at 6:39 p.m. And so I'll read the legal notice, and I'll ask anyone who wishes to speak to this matter to stand and be sworn in. The Genoa Township Trustees initiated a zoning text and map amendment, ZC 2021-04 to create a Hoover Watershed Overlay District, Article 7, along with minimal amendments to current articles related to the creation of said district and zoning administration, continued from April 6, 2022. Does anyone wish to speak this evening? All right, so we'll skip that. The legal notice for this meeting was printed and published on April 22nd, 2022 in the Delaware Gazette and posted in the Genoa Township Hall on April 8th, 2022. The following exhibits were added or updated. Exhibit J, all public comments received between September 2nd, 2021 and May 3rd, 2022. And Exhibit K, staff proposal summary dated April 9th, 2022. So I'll turn it over to Joe for the staff report.
Sure, just out of, to be safe, probably should swear me in.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Vaughn. A couple corrections. I may have passed over an older version of the script. So all the public comments we'll incorporate into the exhibit list will be through this evening.
Okay.
And then also, we did advertise this hearing in the Delaware Gazette because this was a continuation. This meeting originally was a date and time on place uncertain. If you recall, back in the August meeting, we had to schedule this hearing for this date. So we did run that ad in the Gazette to meet the advertising requirements
Okay.
for this evening. So where we last left off with this, the last, I think, substantive discussion we had with it was the hearing in early May, and then we've just been continuing it on the record in the June meeting and then the July and August meetings to this evening. So where really we're at is, I think the board reached the point where you had questions that we all agreed were sort of more of a legal nature, and we really couldn't proceed any further with anything until you had some of those questions answered. So that's when we started going down the RFQ path, and we did that obviously over the summer. You've interviewed some candidates, and we brought up the idea of possibly bringing in Mr. Griggs with Roche Johnson and Griggs during one of your special meetings a week or so ago. And that sort of brings us to where we're at this evening. So I really have nothing further to present. I think the board had some questions that you wanted to ask Mr. Griggs as part of this hearing. So I'll turn it back over to you,
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman.
Very good. So now that we're all up to speed, I think my biggest concern with the overlay is and I think I've spoken to Mr. Griggs about this, it doesn't protect density in Planning Area 5. And then also in conversation with Mr. Griggs, he had presented that we could put densities in the comp plan and revise our zoning resolution. That is the path that I prefer to go to after exploring this further. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but feel free to share your thoughts.
I've heard a number of ideas come up recently. Everything from waiting to revise the comprehensive plan and zoning resolution to instituting a moratorium on any PRD developments. And one of my concerns is that maybe this doesn't address Planning Area 5, but it does address everything in the Hoover watershed and would protect a number of things in addition to reducing density. Is there any harm in instituting this until such time as we would have a revised comprehensive plan and zoning resolution? Because otherwise our doors remain completely open. And that's one of the things we wanted to do, was to get something into effect sooner rather than later.
Mr. Griggs?
Yeah, certainly you can do that. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Is there harm in approving an overlay and then taking it away when we?
As long as there's nothing in the pipeline. So if you were to establish, I hate the use of the word overlay, because when I talk overlay, it means something completely different. But when you're establishing these, I'm basically going to call it supplemental regulations.
Okay.
If anything comes into the pipeline, then they have to play by those rules, and you can't really change those rules. If there's nothing in the pipeline, absolutely you have the ability to revise, repeal, rescind, whatever the case may be. Perfect example is Orange Township, right? When they put their moratorium on their overlay, we had to wait until that application was decided. Once it was decided, then they instituted the moratorium, fixed the issues, and then it's now back open for business, if you will. So that's the risk that you run, is that someone comes in under those rules. I think you got to let them complete that process. So,
You have to let them complete that process before you take away the overlay.
yeah, I mean, essentially, you cannot change the rules of the game midstream.
Just for that application.
Just for that application.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
But once that application is through, you know, we would probably have a legitimate interest or a legitimate explanation as to why we're changing the rules at that point. And then everybody else would have to live by whatever those rules are. And that's what you need. That's the struggle, is that you have to be consistent. You have to have clearly defined rules. If your rules are in place, it's very difficult to deny applications. But I tell people all the time, if you don't like the rules, then change the rules, right? And that's what you need to do. If you're not happy with density, then you need to change it. And I think once you do change it, I think it'll be fine.
So if someone came in, let me kind of work this through here. If someone came in under what would be this supplemental regulation,
Yes.
and then a new revised comprehensive plan and zoning resolution were instituted, am I correct that that would take effect on whatever day? There'd be the 30-day referendum period. But there would be a distinct cutoff except for that application that had come in under the supplemental regulation.
Yes.
Okay, so nobody else at that point could use that particular regulation. They'd be under
Not
that
if-
new
Not if
code.
we've rescinded it or revised it. I mean, so
So it-
whatever we do.
In effect, it's just like when we have a zoning resolution, we make an amendment to it. If you applied under the old one, those rules apply.
Correct.
And as of such and such a date, if you apply, you're under the new one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
That is an option. What would be the advantage or disadvantage of placing a moratorium on development versus the overlay or cloud, whatever you want?
Moratoriums are tricky. And, you know, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that if you put a moratorium on that you know, that you wouldn't get sued. That's a distinct possibility. Developers hate moratoriums.
Even if there's not an active application?
Even if there's not an active application. Now, it sits better. The key to a moratorium is, you know, keeping it short. So a specific start, end date. I think you also need to provide, you need to provide a legitimate governmental interest as to why you need to pause. And just because we want to is not a legitimate reason. You know, the more recent one other than Orange Township was Pataskala, was a big one, where they paused everything. And their justification, their governmental interest was infrastructure. And they needed to really study the infrastructure and how they were going to pay for that infrastructure. So they needed to have a timeout on development. But what I would tell you is once you start getting above 6 months in time on a moratorium, you know, the more risk you run. But certainly, Trustee Antoinette, if there's nothing in the pipeline, obviously that's best case scenario.
So I'm going to ask the question I think I've asked multiple times, which is, again, if this regulation is good enough for the Hoover tributary area, why isn't it good enough just to apply to the entire township?
That one's above my pay grade. That's up to you guys. I mean, again, these actions and what you're engaging in is a legislative process. You're setting policy. And it's really your vision, right? You're the elected officials, and you need to decide with what remaining land you have open for development, what you want it to look like. And you have a great amount of authority in terms of density. When we got general welfare zoning a few years back, which allows you a lot more flexibility in terms of increasing lot size and limiting density. So it's really just a purely a policy decision for you three to decide.
I like your idea of, that's the whole issue for me, for the overlay. It doesn't protect what's left of the township. It only protects the northeast and the east corner. So I'd be willing, if this overlay was over all the township, what I think Joe has said, that defeats the purpose of an overlay.
Well, we wouldn't be doing an overlay, we would
You would
just be
just-
revising our PRD.
And that's certainly an option.
Yeah.
And that's,
I'm not certain, so, I don't want to belabor this, but so my clients, I do stuff all over the country, so I read tons of zoning, and I'm not for making our zoning code any more complicated than it already is. And I think this just adds more confusion to our zoning, and that's one of the big reasons why I'm not all on board. I like the premises of it, protecting Hoover and limiting development, but I'm not sure, I still am not convinced why we just don't apply it to the entire township. That's my position.
I think one of the things that I see it doing is in the interim, until you can protect, quotes, the entire township, as seems to be the goal there, this will protect a portion of it, and a large portion of the undeveloped land in the township. Not every piece, but a very large portion. And so I see it as a benefit in that area.
Yeah.
You know, and again, we just heard that once we would put in a new comprehensive plan and/or zoning resolution, this can go away. It starts in 30 days, and it protects up until such time as the other two documents would be revised.
I agree, but I don't like 1.65. I don't think 1.65 for that area of the township is enough to protect the rural feel. So I would be willing to approve an overlay temporarily. I don't think that's the end result. It could be a temporary result, but I would like to see the density lower.
What would you like to see it?
In the end, when we finalize the planning areas, I was thinking planning area 4 would be 1.35, but on the other side of Hoover be 1. But for this, I would settle, I think 1.35 is reasonable. That used to be planning area 5's density, 1.35, and it was the sewer model for years, 1.35. So I think that is, I don't know, I'll defer to the attorney.
Yeah,
Is that
no,
okay?
I mean, if, yeah, I mean, I don't see any issue with that. I mean, if that's the decision of the board, and I don't know what, Joe's thoughts are, but.
Just trying to gather my thoughts here. I think we need to think if we do have anything potentially in the pipeline. Has anyone met with anyone or talked with anyone recently? I know I have someone who has contacted me who could potentially be affected by this. So it's very early in the game, so out of respect for those conversations, I'm not at liberty to really say much. It's not an actual application at this point, and who knows if it will be. But that there is potentially something out there.
So if that potential were to come in, if this overlay were enacted, my understanding it would be in effect 30 days unless there's a referendum pulled on it. Then it would be different. But let's assume that in 30 days, this became the law of our land. If that person came in before that 30 days, then that 1.35 would not be applicable. Is that correct?
That's the stuff lawsuits are made of.
We're going to find ourselves in that
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah. I would make the argument they're subject
But again, I
to
would
the overlay.
I would bring up the point, that is the whole reason for putting this in place. We are trying to protect what's left of our township and our wishes of the residents and our guiding documents. So I think we have every right to put this in place. It's the whole reason we're having this conversation. If we weren't having this conversation, we wouldn't want to change any of this.
And I think to Joe's point, I think what I'm hearing Joe say is basically is just kind of a good government. You know, if someone's reached out to him, he may, you know, at some point need to tell them.
It could
The
create.
board's moving in a certain direction.
Yes, because certain directives have been given under the certain current circumstances and with knowledge that there was a pending change.
But it's no secret that we haven't been on board with the overlay because it doesn't fix the whole problem. And I have been very clear that the density needs to change. That's public record.
Yes, and we're all very aware of that. Whether or not other parties are, that I don't know.
Yeah, I think once you adopt it, I think everybody coming in after that has to abide by the rules of the game.
You have
I
a
don't
comment?
know if any of the trustees are familiar with Jefferson Township.
Where? In what
It's just
counter?
East of Gahanna, New Albany. They were getting swallowed up by Gahanna, New Albany. I checked there, and it's very rural. Farm, fields, horses, and their PRD's one.
So I represent Jefferson Township. And they were a textbook case of how to plan appropriately, because they were faced with annexation initially from City of Columbus. So that township actually created their own water district. And then along their borders, they provided for quite a bit of density. Didn't want to, but wanted to make it attractive. And as you flow back into the township, now granted, Gahanna's there and they've had to make some tough decisions around Gahanna, but as you flow back into the township, it's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it is a really nice township the deeper you get, and they are at one in a lot of areas. So.
If we
So I
have,
still haven't got an answer why we just don't change the PRD district and not do an overlay. Why are we
I
insisting
don't
on
think,
this overlay?
we're not. I think I'm in agreement with Connie, do this in the interim. It's not the end result, but it will protect us until we figure out what we want to do for the permanent solution. But it's going to protect us in the meantime.
And this is not an overlay under the PUD statute, so anything that comes in would be subject, I know it's a question Joe
Yes.
asked, would be subject to referendum.
Okay.
So Orange Township's overlay is a overlay under the PD statute, and anything that's approved through that is not subject to referendum. But here, that's why I call it
Is.
a supplemental regulations that just lay over top of everything. So development would be still subject to referendum under this process.
And after hearing about the moratorium, I feel like this is a safer alternative for
It
us
is.
than a moratorium because of potential lawsuits, correct? Yeah. Just makes
So-
sense.
I know you just mentioned about the 1.65, 1.35. Since there may be something that Joe has been working with someone potentially, and the information that this person or company has been given would be probably talking more about this Hoover overlay kind of thing and that kind of density, then would you be comfortable with 1.65 for the overlay and then looking at, okay, then let me ask a second question. All right, well, I got the head shake. Let me ask a second question. Could that entity still pursue a divergence? Would that be allowed under this supplemental requirement?
Oh, and then the overlay?
But my whole thing is, I guess anybody can ask for a divergence, but my whole point is, how long do you let that go? And then somebody else comes in and says, well, you allowed them to have a divergence.
No.
You know, where do you draw the line?
Well, and I think the line here is, if you've been working with someone,
Yeah.
you know, that's a little bit different than somebody all of a sudden tonight listens to this and says, oh my goodness, I better rush in there. That's a very different scenario. There's something that in good faith, Joe has been giving information about, here's our zoning code, here's the discussions. And so the question would be, could they file a request for a divergence on density and negotiate?
I suppose there's nothing that precludes them from doing that. I believe what we heard from Mr. Griggs was that, though, once you put the rules in place, you really ought to try to
Stick to 'em.
stick to that.
Yeah, typically, I mean, it's all how you, Connie, it's all how you write your code and how you write the language. I mean, certainly I've dealt with texts that allow for divergences from density. You know, you got codes that give increased density for more open, you know, for greater concentration of open, but you can do whatever you want. I would say it's not typical to grant divergences for density. Most places frown upon that just because, you know, what Trustee Vaughn said was, you know, it's almost like the Board of Zoning Appeals and you hear the precedent word, you know, and once you start going down that track, it becomes difficult because developers are very sophisticated and they know how to make the arguments. But so it's not typical, but again, to answer your question, legally you can if that's the way your code is written.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for that as a long-term request. I'm thinking if there were something literally kind of in the works that's been working through the township in good faith, working through our zoning office, then would that be an appropriate response?
I don't know that I can answer that question right now. You know, I would have to have more information.
So what I am hearing, though, is that you would be okay with the overlay at 1.35.
Yes,
As the high number,
yes.
and then the low number being?
I thought we had talked about just one density. If the whole point of the overlay was conservation, we should only have one number.
Yeah, I think the issue is with the way the PRD is laid out, having the two numbers and the open space, and this being supplemental regulations to the PRD, I think structurally speaking, it needs to sort of mirror that, at least for the time being. Otherwise, honestly, we'd probably have to go back and do some rewriting to make sure we weren't starting to create some inconsistencies or gaps that we didn't intend to make by just going with one number. I'm not saying that's a wrong approach, but I think at this point where we are in the game, we're a little late to do that without having to do some significant
That's fine. I was thinking 1.35 net density.
net developable acres.
Yeah, net developable
As the
acres,
height.
yes. Yes.
I mean, if that's the board, obviously it's board's prerogative, and if you feel like, you know, if you haven't met with anyone and given
I have-
directive, contra, that would be my only concern is if any, you know, obviously I can explain that there's been a pending overlay on the table for a while now, and it's been public record, but at the same degree, you know, I do want to avoid any potentially awkward situations if we can.
Right.
Awkward situations that I don't know if they could turn into legal situations, but people don't always try.
Right.
I mean, having a conversation doesn't warrant an application.
Right.
Until it's an application, it's just a discussion.
And you guys have been talking about this for a while
A
now.
year.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think there's again, there's, you guys know, people can sue for pretty much any reason.
Yeah.
But just given the fact pattern, I mean, you know, unless we've made commitments that I'm not aware of, I think you're fine.
I doubt that anyone has made a firm commitment on anything. It's kind of the maybe, you
Yeah.
know, and we're talking, so.
Any good developer knows that until they get through the process of Genoa Township, that it's not a done deal, so.
So, Mr. Schaefer, are you saying then that you would need to rework the document and present something new to us? Is that what I'm hearing?
If we want to go with one number, that'd be my recommendation.
Oh, no, we don't. After talking to you, I'm okay with 2. I just, that had been mentioned before. I thought you were in agreement with that.
I'm in agreement with, I don't necessarily mind the idea in general, but in terms of this particular document, I think it would.
That's fine. Then let's go with 2.
And what are the two?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What are the two?
Oh, well, that's the question, is
Well,
what do you think the
If
second
you,
number be?
yeah.
If you want to go based on, I mean, 1.35 out of the old comprehensive plan, its old lower number was 1.1.
Then let's do that.
I would also recommend, I think, to make sure we're being consistent with the verbiage of the PRD, and I'm surprised I didn't catch this sooner, was in section 7, pardon me just a moment, section 703.02 on page 7-2, subsection A, where it talks about the density. I think we need to change the term net density, which is capitalized, just to the term density, which is a lowercase d. That matches the PRD, because we're saying the density is would now be 1.35 dwelling units per net developable acre. Net density and net developable acre, if you look at our definitions, are technically 2 different things, and the PRD uses net developable acre. So again, for the sake of consistency, I think net density needs to become just lowercase density if we are going to be making edits.
Okay.
And then it sounds like 1.65 becomes 1.35, and the 1.35, the end of that statement becomes 1.1. And then I guess my question for Mr. Griggs, is this something we ought to write up, re-present to the board, or could they make any edits on the fly as part of a motion?
Whether any developers are listening tonight that want to come under the old rules. I mean, I'm a big fan of letting staff present a clean document to you. I've done amendments on the fly, and
Okay.
never a good thing.
Things
in my
get
opinion.
missed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's typically my preference as well.
yeah.
And there's nothing to say you necessarily have to wait until your next regular meeting in
Right.
October. I mean, I know none of us love any more special meetings than we absolutely
Well,
have to
let's
have.
do that then. We can decide that now, right? How long do you want to take to revise the documents?
I think as long as we continue this to the time, date, place certain on the record, we don't need to have a ton of lead time, right? Because we wouldn't have to advertise, right?
You do not have to advertise. If you continue this hearing to a time, date, place certain, you don't need to do anything else under the law.
So I could basically just make the revision, pass it out to the board, post it online, and within a couple days, they could re-meet.
Absolutely.
Your third Thursday of the month is always left open, but we also don't, it sounds like we don't even need to wait that long. If you don't want to, it's usually comes down to a matter of, is the hall available and are all of us available? That would be the 15th.
I am out of town until late the 15th. I can do the following week.
Following week, I'm just looking through the rental calendar. On which date? The 22nd. Oh, yeah. So Thursday, the 22nd, the hall's rented. Wednesday, the 21st appears to be open, however, that's cleaning night. So sometimes that can cause some awkwardness. Tuesday, the 20th appears to be open. Monday, the 19th appears to be open as well. So basically, the only night that week that it's not open, that's.
I'm
Thursday.
available any night that week.
You are or are not?
I am.
You are.
Any of them work for me.
I cannot do the 19th, Monday.
All right,
Then, I guess
20th.
if you wanted Mr. Griggs there, I suppose we should ask him as well.
I am going to be sitting on a beach,
Oh, good
Oh,
for
dear.
you.
drinking an adult beverage.
Can we have an off-site meeting? Oh,
You're more than welcome to come. I got plenty of room.
That's funny.
what, do we really need to have Mr. Griggs here?
You don't need me there, not to
yeah.
adopt this. No.
I seriously doubt that there would be a great deal of public comment since we're dropping those numbers way lower than we had planned.
Okay. So September 20th, 6:30, Township Hall.
September 20th, 6:30, Township Hall, that's what I'm hearing.
Okay, I'll move to continue the public hearing for the subject zoning text amendment dated February 14th, 2022, to create a Hoover Watershed Overlay District along with minor related modifications, also known as ZC case number 2021-04, until September 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM in the Township Hall. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Goodman? Yes. Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Bone?
Motion carries. Thank you.
Anything else? Good?
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
have we officially
I'm going to close.
decided that we'd like Mr. Griggs to help us now that we've taken all his
Free
time?
service?
I thought,
I think that was part of this
Hey,
discussion.
I love you guys. But I have to pay for my vacation.
I think, well, I made it clear at the last meeting that I was in favor. I think Mark was the one who hadn't spoke
Yeah, I
to him
even had
yet.
a follow-up discussion.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
I was all for it all
I know.
along.
She was in
recommended you.
favor. It was nothing against you.
Together
We-
alone.
I
It's
just
the
never-
newbies, right?
You don't know what you don't know.
That's right. I appreciate it.
Thank
So,
you.
Anytime. So Joe, I'm assuming Joe's going to reach out to me and.
Perfect. Yep, go ahead.
You, but I was going to do it as a sidebar.
Fine.
If the board doesn't mind.
Perfect.
Maybe we can circle back around to the rest of my items a
Okay.
little bit later in the agenda.
All right, sounds good. Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody. Yep, take care.
So at this time, I'm going to move to close the zoning meeting at 7:21. Is that correct? Yeah, 7:12, sorry, PM. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you. Roll call?
Trustee Goodman?
Yes.
Trustee Antonetts?
Yes.
Trustee Vaughn?
Yes. Motion carries. This time at 7:21, we're adjourned from the zoning meeting. Yes, thank you. 7:12. I am, no. I barely glanced at my phone and I couldn't really pick up on it. All right, so now we're back in our regular meeting. We're going to scooch down to administration with Paul Wise until Joe Schaefer returns.
Thank you, Board. I have one item this evening. It's a resolution of authorization. Mr. Barna has been writing a grant for us, a lengthy grant that requires a lot of backup material and letters of support. And part of the grant application for this grant that we're getting is a resolution of authorization signed by the board. So I recommend the board pass this resolution this evening, and then we can make this part of our formal application.
Very good, thank you. I'll make a resolution to approve the Clean Ohio Green Space Conservation Grant Resolution as presented. Do I have a second?
Second?
Roll call?
Roll call. Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you very
Paul.
much.
Thank you, Paul. All right, at that, we'll move it over to Bob for maintenance.
Thank you, Board. First item is accept the resignation of Corey Fleck.
All right, I'll move to accept the resignation of Corey Flagg, Deputy Director of Roads, Building, and Ground, effective August 5th, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second?
Very good. Discussion? Roll call?
Roll call. Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Next item is supplemental appropriation.
All right, I'll move to approve a supplemental appropriation in the Road and Bridge Fund in the amount of $15,000 from account 2031-910-910-0000 to 2031-330-314-00030. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Bob, do you want to tell us what this is?
Donna will have to.
Oh, okay.
That's the money we needed for the skid steer repairs, which is your next item, your then and now purchase order for Southeastern.
Perfect, thank you. Roll call?
Roll call, Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Next is to approve the then and now purchase order.
Okay, I'll move to approve the then and now purchase order to Southeastern Equipment Company in the amount of $10,932.54 for a skid steer repair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
If-
Okay, go ahead.
If you would like to know, our skid steer got a hydraulic leak underneath it, and they had to take out everything in it to get to the leak. And it was down at Southeastern for almost 2 months.
Oh, wow.
So we ended up renting the skid steer while ours was being repaired.
Okay. Roll call?
Roll call, Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Next is a McNamara Barn update, and Molly, the Parks Advisory Chair, will tell you all about it.
Perfect.
Good evening, Board. Before the meeting started, I put at each of your places a new estimate for a replica replacement of the barn. So we talked about this, I think a couple months ago, maybe, I don't have the exact date. And there were a couple things that we were questioning as far as the dimensions of the barn, the dimensions of the pad, things like that. Those have all been corrected. You'll notice the new date on this estimate is 8/24. These dimensions match the current barn. The concrete pad is the dimension of the current square footage of the current barn. And they have added in a rough estimate of what the peak would be, which was something that the Parks Advisory Committee was asking about, is what is the estimated height of the peak of the roof. So we come tonight to ask for some decision as to allow us to move forward, not necessarily with actual construction, but just for the idea of accepting these parameters and then being able to move forward with the potential of an actual blueprint. Not necessarily tomorrow, but basically meaning that we're ready to move forward because we're ready to make a commitment to replacing the barn. Renee and Bob were at the barn yesterday with a roofer, and he gave another opinion about the condition of the barn and the fact that it's really not replaceable. It's in too bad a shape. It would cost us more to try to repair what we have than it would be to replace. So that's at least 3 estimates that we've had. One was favorable to keeping it and repairing it. One was Hickory Circle here that's in front of you that gave us an estimate for repairing it, but also said it would be cheaper and cheaper in the long run to replace it with a replica of this current barn. And then the one that Renee and Bob talked to yesterday, who gave his opinion that was, it is not worth saving. So given that, this is the estimate. You can see high end for this estimate is $250,000. And without the cupola, they did line item out the cupola, and that is not what is on the current barn. But the Parks Advisory Committee suggested that we consider a cupola. The committee also given what was estimated early on from this construction company, and then some of what they suggested, which is the second page of your document, which is what they initially did in their renderings, and then I added in some sketches to put in some Dutch doors, some fiberglass panels in the walls, and as well as in the roof. So that's all what we discussed a couple months ago when we talked. I asked the committee if we could make a recommendation for going forward, and they recommended that we keep it as sketched, which is what is estimated in the estimate in front of you. So adding on to this high end of this estimate of $250, we're also estimating an extra roughly $50,000 for the landscaping around the new structure, as well as tables and benches inside the structure, because the idea would be to build the replica, but the replica would be more open as a park shelter rather than enclosed as a barn. So I open it up to you guys for discussion as to what your thoughts are as far as, do we keep the sketches, which is, you know, full tilt, mini Dutch doors, fiberglass panels, add or remove the cupola? Can we come to a decision as to what it would actually look like so that we have the potential to go for blueprints?
Anyone?
There's no electric?
There is not electric currently that's in the area, but the current barn does not have electric.
We have this funding in place?
No, the idea is if we can get basically the buy-in and everybody's agreement that, yes, this is what we should do, that when we have the next levy cycle, which the levy is up is voted on in November of '23, that we would basically make this project a priority in that next levy cycle. That's why I'm saying, like, this isn't a do it tomorrow thing, because we've got to wait for the next levy cycle. Pending a levy approval, then we'd like to make this a priority project.
How much will blueprints cost?
I haven't priced them. I'm guessing a few $1,000s. That's totally a guess. I really have no idea.
The plan for the Parks Committee is, if we move forward with this, let's have some renderings before next fall and have everything ready to go so that if the Parks levy is renewed, it can start the following year. Rather than the Parks levy be passed and then us start this process and it takes another year to get it all our ducks in a row, for a lack of,
Keep in mind that
yeah.
at this price, this would probably equal all of the capital coming out of a parks levy for one entire year.
Yep.
So there'll be no
It would be the
trail
only project.
enhancements, nothing else, especially with such a small carryover we're carrying.
Unless
time.
you find a grant somewhere.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Is our goal would be to work with Jim to find some grants that would help to cover some of the cost.
I know that having been the liaison to the parks previously, this discussion has been going on for quite a while. And it's gone everywhere from repair the barn, which it's fallen down, to building a replica. And I understand the levy cycle and that this would be done in hopefully that first year of a next levy cycle if it passes. I had the same question Ms. Batten did about what's the cost of the blueprints, because that's going to have to be paid for up front. When I look at this, I'm fine with all of it except the cupola. The cupola isn't there currently, so if we're replicating a barn, we're not replicating if we add that to it. Additionally, I know when I was on there, it was talked about that's going to give us a lot more light. Not sure it's going to give that much more light. And given that that barn sits in a literal wind tunnel, I can see quite a bit of damage happening to that. And the repair to get up that high, having to rent a crane or whatever each time, becomes very, very costly. And I also think it'd be great target practice for BB guns.
You got a good point.
So, you know, we've had some vandalism of different kinds. So I'm okay, but I'd like to take that 15 to 20,000 from the cupola and put it into the landscape and furniture.
Great. I'm okay with that. The other thing I want to bring up, and I don't want to be, I just have to put this out there, that we may potentially purchase another property that has a barn on it. So in the back of my head, I'm thinking, do we need two? Do we want to proceed with this and then we acquire additional properties and it has a very nice barn on it? Do we need two? Is my question. That's my only hesitation with this. That's the unknown. I don't know, Paul, the grant is just, we just approved it tonight. Do you know the timeline for that? When?
I know by the end of September, the application has to be turned in for a decision the first part of the year.
Okay, so we would know by January.
I hope so.
That still gives us enough time, though, for you to get some blueprints if this doesn't come. Again, I don't want to spend money on blueprints. I really would like to know how that turns out and then decide. I did make a few phone calls today. I did talk to Don Durbin about the rental of this facility and the police station. I know the police station's pretty full, their room, on a regular basis. This township hall is too, rented. And I did talk to Chrissy at the parks or maintenance, and she said that McNamara shelter is rented almost every weekend, like you can't get it. That goes first. And I think she said it's a couple things. The amenities at the park, plus I do think it's our biggest shelter. But as far as all the other shelters, they're not booked constantly. So the other thing is, what do we need? And I look back to, if we're going to acquire property with a barn, how many of these facilities do we need? These facilities, all of them aren't booked all the time. So I don't think the need is there. So I think we need to take all of that into consideration before we move forward.
Outside of the other property, I think this would be the equivalent to the shelter that's on the west end. So it would just take some of the pressure off of that, or give the people who missed out on that one another option.
I think you're right.
Because it's still an open air shelter versus, I think we get fairly regularly the comment that people would like to see us have like an Everett barn type thing. Personally, I don't know that that's realistic for us. We're not as big and don't have the funding as Westerville, but this is more like I'm pointing at the screen because McNamara's up there.
Right,
right. It's right there, speak of the devil. I think it's more equivalent to that. And I don't know what the other property, what those, rental potentials would be. But,
Well, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I think the other park that is rented out regularly would be Freeman, because it has a
Yes.
decent shelter, but it does not have a lot of parking. Whereas this end, both east and west end of McNamara have sufficient parking that you could have a larger group there.
Yes, you're right, and you are correct. Chrissy said McNamara fills up first and Freeman second, and those are the two shelters that are booked the most.
So I have no problem in waiting until we find out
Okay.
about a grant, but I also
Yeah.
think that we can have this firmed up as we probably have done tonight, so that the Parks Committee knows what they're working with.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with the cupola, and I am in favor of replacing versus repairing.
I think too that once we move into and I understand like we're not gonna do a blueprint stage till probably after the first of the year, we have more information and that makes total sense. But I think too that once we move into that blueprint stage, that gives us a communication piece with the community to help, message out what the intention is, why the intention, is what it is, that we just didn't go in and decide to just tear down this historical structure, that it just doesn't make financial sense to do that. But our idea instead is to do a replica, which will be a new building, still have the same look, same historical value, if you will. So,
Speaking of tearing down the old barn, there was discussion about whether there would be a cost associated for the township to tear that down, or if we could offer that up for anybody that comes, takes it down, assumes liability, and hauls stuff away. Have we found out any more about that?
I haven't asked, I haven't asked recently. The gentleman that I'm working with at this construction company says that he's got a couple people that might be, I mean, I don't think he's talked to them yet, just because we're not there yet. But he has expressed that he does have a couple people that might be interested in coming and taking it down. Based on the conversations that we've had, my understanding is that there's the potential that they would take it down at no cost in exchange for the lumber. We haven't gotten there as far as those specific conversations. And then my assumption is too, and we'd have to get this confirmed, that they would have the liability insurance and all of those appropriate things before we let them come into the township and demo a building.
Because otherwise that would be an additional cost onto this
Yes.
too.
Yeah. So the goal is all of that would be at no cost. Given that all the right parameters are met, that we're gonna be able to do that at no cost.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you
Okay,
for all the work you've been doing on this.
yeah. All right, so then we'll move forward with hold off on blueprints until after the first of the year, scratch the cupola and move the money into the landscaping tables.
Perfect,
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
thank you. All right, next, Bob.
Next item is the loop trail that we had suggested at Hillmar Park and at Center Green. We wasn't approved for grants this year. I would like to make a suggestion to the board. I think we can put the base in them loop trails and then cover with stone. And I'm gonna use the grindings that I have at Jaycox, the mountain that I have out there for base. So I wanted to find out what the board thought about that idea.
Anyone?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, Bob called me, I said, great.
Yeah, sounds like reasonable.
Bob, you had told me it's cheaper than
It-
hauling it away?
I don't have to hire trucks or nothing. We can take the grindings right there down to, we'll dig the pass in and then fill them in with them and then just cap them with stone. They won't be walking on nothing that's gonna hurt anybody to walk on or nothing.
Okay,
By the time the sledding hill opens up, so.
Yeah, and another thing, I know the board has got several complaints about out to Jaycox. We have been hauling the stuff away and the grindings, and it'll all be gone before the winter.
okay, thank you. And Bob, before you finish up, kudos to you and your crew for the pocket park and the swing and the benches. I was out there this morning.
Yeah,
It's great.
I understand we're getting quite a few on Facebook saying how nice it was.
It looks great.
Fantastic.
Very good. Thank you.
And just for the board to know, the grass will be growing soon. I'm gonna
I did see that.
replant the grass, and we're almost finished with the wall. The two little walls we didn't get done, we almost got them done now. So it'll all be done here in another week or two.
Perfect. Thank you. Joe Schaefer, you want to finish your item?
Thank you. Sorry for having to leave the meeting there momentarily. Yes, the only other item I had on the agenda was the zoning commission vacancy. As I noted a few months ago, Mr. Moore resigned from the zoning commission. You accepted that resignation. We received some interest from some of the current alternates, either on the zoning commission or the BZA, as well as one sitting BZA regular member. And then we received applications by the deadline you established on August 15th. And during your August regular meeting, the board determined you wanted to wait, I think, to have more discussion or plot out a course for this until this evening. So I'm bringing that back in front of you this evening to see how the board would like to proceed on this matter.
I prefer to interview them all.
Yeah.
I mean, I've reviewed the resumes, but I'd like to interview them. Would you?
Fine.
Okay,
I don't know that it's necessary for a couple of them, but that's all right.
okay.
Would you like to proceed with trying to just setting a meeting date and hopefully whomever can attend that? interview
Yeah,
can attend
but
that
I
interview?
also, I want to accommodate schedules. I don't want to leave anyone out. So whatever we have to do to get if they want to do individual phone conversations with us, like we did, I think the last round, there were a couple people who couldn't make it on the night that we had set.
Okay, so go down the path of setting a night, interviewing as many as we can, knowing that whoever can't come, perhaps the board would reach out to individually, or that
Yes.
individual would reach out to the board individually.
Yes. Are you, everybody okay with that?
Or even if they couldn't be here personally, if they could do a phone interview with the three of us.
Yes, that's
From
fine
a
too.
remote location.
Yep, that's fine too.
I'd much prefer to have all three of us interview at the same time as opposed to individual conversations.
Okay, that's fine.
For consistency.
Is there a date the board has in mind
No.
for when you would like to do that?
For that, we don't need this room, right? We can do it in a
If we're not going
smaller
to
room.
record the meeting or do the live stream, and if you think you're going to just go straight into executive session for that purpose, yeah, we don't necessarily need this room, and that other room is pretty much always open,
Yeah.
since it's ours.
Yeah, so then we can do it whenever we want.
Yeah, and you could do it during the day, you could do it during the evening. It's certainly up to just really the availability of all of us at this point. I mean, really, I certainly will plan on being there, but even if there was a conflict or something, if you're not recording it or anything, you technically don't even need to have
Okay,
myself there, but again, I'll certainly going to try.
okay. Do we want to do it that same week? I think to conduct them next week, well, I guess, can we shoot for next week?
20th?
20th? The same day?
We're going to be meeting anyway, and that should be brief.
Normally, when we start them early, don't we? I mean, how many are there? I didn't count.
I thought I counted 8.
8.
And if we gave them
Usually you
what?
go for about 10, 15 minutes per person.
We did 15 minutes.
So that's 2 hours.
Oh, that's not bad.
The only thing, if you do it the same night as the Hoover hearing, if for whatever reason that would go longer than normal, you might, and you're telling someone to be here at a certain time, and
Right.
then you go late, it could back everything up. So you'd either need to do them all before, or during a day, or on a different date to avoid that.
Could start late afternoon,
That's fine.
3 o'clock, 3 to 5, call for pizza or.
What do you want to do?
Well, I mean, if they're professionals and have a job, I don't know.
I know they're not going to be able to come in at 3. Said 2 hours. If we started at 5 and interviewed 3 before, did you say there's 6 or 8?
8.
So if we did 4 before then and then 4 after?
You've got a little bit of time in between, getting one in, one out, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's
So-
usually about 20 minutes when you factor in sort of the breathing time,
You can
moving in
do
and out.
3 per hour max.
So if we started at 5, we would end a little after 6, so we could meet at 6:30?
For the Hoover hearing?
Or would you rather just do it another night?
And then you're going to schedule 3 for after that? Or we're just going to,
Yeah, I would. I think we're probably just better off doing it in a totally different night.
Or could we start at 5, do the interviews, and delay the trustee meeting until a later hour?
Yeah, I like that one.
I mean, that way you've got all your interviews
Yes.
done. And instead of having a 6:30 trustee meeting, it's
7?
7:30,
Yeah,
whatever works. We would just need
we
to,
post what time, whatever works?
The only issue
No, I
is you
didn't mean it
just
that way.
closed that hearing saying that your
yeah, it
meeting
was at
continued to
6:30.
6:30.
We did. We just already.
So I'm not sure procedurally now whether
Yes,
that's the
it has to start.
I'd
yeah.
probably prefer not. It might
Yeah.
be okay, but I
Yeah.
prefer not to get in the might situation.
Yep. All right, I mean, I can make it work, but I think it just might be easier to meet a different night.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can do that as well.
Can anybody do Wednesday or Thursday that week?
Thursday that week, the hall is, or well,
We
the
don't
hall's
need the
booked, but we
hall,
could be in the
yeah.
other room, yeah.
can do either Wednesday or Thursday.
Me too. How about you?
I've left my phone, so
Seriously?
just pick it up, I'll make it.
Wednesday?
Fine.
All right, Wednesday, the 21st? I can't. You can't? Oh, well, good one. Okay.
Didn't need your phone for that.
Good thing. Man, you would never live that down. All right, then the 22nd? So are you good with the 22nd then? Okay. September 22nd,
In the administration conference room?
yes.
Are we going to start early, 5 or
I like
so?
5. I think at least someone should be able to get here by 5, you would think. Let's try. If they can't, fine. All right. I think that's all for you, right, Joe?
What's that?
For your.
That is all for me,
Yes,
yes. I
okay,
think
all right.
we
So we'll
talked
wrap
enough.
up your section. Thank you. All right, so at this time, we'll turn it over to fire.
Good evening, Board. On the agenda this evening, a couple educational, educational requests. The first being request a motion to approve educational supplement for full-time firefighter paramedic Ron Delozier per Article 15.8 of the Local Firefighters 4307 Union Agreement. Ron has recently completed his associate's degree in fire science with Eastern Gateway Community College. His official transcript has been turned in to Ms. Greco with Human Resources for review, and I would ask for a resolution approving that, and that is a supplement of 75 cents per hour of his base hourly rate.
Very good. I'll move to approve the educational supplement for full-time firefighter paramedic Ronald Delozier for Article 15.8 of the Genoa Township Professional Firefighter Local 4307 Union Agreement in the amount of 75 cents an hour for an associate's degree effective August 1st, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Secondly, Mr. Delozier now, since he has completed his associate's degree, would request consideration to enter into the contractual agreement with the Firefighters Union Local 4307, like I said, per the collective bargaining agreement, Article 16, for tuition reimbursement. He intends to enroll in Columbia Southern University and pursue his bachelor's degree in fire service administration. And again, that's a contractual item, and I do approve said request. It is an appropriate field of endeavor.
Okay. I'll move to approve the tuition reimbursement for full-time firefighter paramedic Ronald Delozier for a bachelor's degree in fire service administration at Columbia Southern University per Article 16, tuition reimbursement in the International Association of Firefighters Local Number 4307 Union Agreement. Reimbursement will be based upon final grades. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you. And next on the agenda, Donna may have to help me with this a little bit. She had to coach me earlier today. But in front of you on the agenda is a request to approve the transfer of unencumbered money from the Township Fire Fund to the Township Fire Capital Outlay Fund. And just as a brief overview, all that is basically our annual transfer of funds that come in from the levy that we are putting funds into our capital fund, which is basically our vehicle replacement schedule or plan. And that's our yearly deposit that we make to keep the fund solvent and to work towards our plans for purchases of vehicles.
Very good. I'll move to approve the resolution for the transfer of unencumbered money from the Township Fire Fund to the Township Fire Capital Outlay Fund as presented. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you. And the last item on the agenda is, we spoke at the last meeting regarding the purchase of the new aerial ladder truck. And basically, we told you at the last meeting that we were about 90% complete of all the homework that needed to be done on that, and I believe that we all agreed to move forward on that proposal. And so the remaining 10% of the work has been done. We are satisfied with the position that we're in and all the agreements or changes that we proposed to Sutphen Corporation. And in front of, with me this evening, I have a final proposal, and I would ask for a resolution to approve the purchase order to Sutphen Corporation for the new ladder truck, which is a model SPH 100, for the amount of $1,674,213.
I need to interrupt you guys, I'm
Yep.
sorry. I did not look at his appropriations for the fire capital fund, so we will need to approve a permanent appropriations in that amount. So if you guys wouldn't mind passing that resolution first, just a permanent appropriation in the fire capital fund, and then use that number that he has, the 1.6,074,213.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm so sorry,
just-
guys.
I'm good. I just want to make sure I get it, talking too fast. I can't write that
Oh.
fast. Okay, so we're going to approve a permanent appropriation
For the amount of the truck.
for, yep, I
Yep.
got that.
Yeah, and just say that, and that'll be perfect. That's all I need.
Okay, that's short
So
and
moved.
sweet. Okay. So go ahead and do that. Were you finished or?
I'm finished.
Okay, so I'll
so
I'll
sorry.
do that one.
Okay.
Question, go ahead.
question.
Well, let me make the motion first, and then we'll have discussion. All right, so I'll move to approve a permanent appropriation for $1,674,213. Shouldn't there be more to that motion?
Nope, that's
Nope.
it.
Okay,
That's
all
it.
right.
That's
Do
all
I
I
have a
need.
second?
Nope, you're good.
Second.
Thank you. All right, now ask your question.
So there was a lot of discussion about how we were funding this. Does that need to be in this resolution? No?
That's what this resolution is doing. It is moving those funds to be encumbered so that when I go and I issue this purchase order, I have the money there.
But we talked about supplementing ARPA money.
Oh, ARPA. Well, right now, his capital projects fund sits at 1.7 million, 26,287.36. And that is before the transfer that you guys just approved of 56,505. So we have enough money to go ahead and get all of this set aside. So if you guys want to wait on the ARPA, I'm not quite sure where you're at with that. We could always do a reimbursement.
And you're okay with that?
Are you okay with?
I'm okay as long as we can get some money back in that fund, because we do have some upcoming vehicles that we need to look at probably next year. Last month, we talked that we had saved $1.3 million, and I asked you all for the assistance with the ARPA funds to make up the difference, and I believe we agreed to that when the time came of what that dollar figure would be. So as long as either we can put a transfer to make up the difference between the 1.6 and the 1.3 that I have earmarked for that purchase, or
And I can always adjust it as well. So when
So-
I issue the purchase order, it'll all be in the capital fund. And then at a later date, if the board wishes to say, Chief Ponzi, we're going to give you 300,000. At that point in time, you could just pass a very quick resolution, and then I can go in and make an adjustment to the purchase order to reflect that.
I believe we also talked about the ARPA funds, the fact that there would be some money coming back from the sale of our existing truck if it's in good condition, and the fact that we'd be saving money until this truck comes, because it's going to be 12 to 24 months.
that's correct.
So,
I just would
Do you
want to
have any down
reiterate,
payments or anything that
We're
needs
not-
to be made? Nothing.
we do not have to make any down payments. And we did confirm with the vendor that once we enter into the sales agreement, the price that we agreed upon is the prices of what the check will be made out for. There will be no price increases from the vendor. in 20 to 24 months upon delivery. So we are locked into that price.
So your trucks that you need to purchase next year, what are they?
Well, we are beginning to, so obviously, you aren't aware, but we basically mechanically lost a vehicle this week. It was an old 2009 Ford Escape that was a staff vehicle that we'd used for a number of years, and as we bought a couple new ones, we used it as kind of a vehicle for employees to take to go to their physicals, go to trainings. We even use it on a daily basis, have been using it to send a person out to work on if we had to go out and send a single person out to replace batteries or smoke detectors. We were using that in lieu of running the larger trucks because of fuel costs. And that vehicle was taken in to be looked at this week and found to have an extensive rust problem on the chassis and deemed to be unsafe to drive anymore for us. So we have taken that vehicle permanently out of service. So probably, if you want to know my whole plan, I'd be happy to share it with you. We currently have a 1999 Ford F-350 that we use as the dive truck. It has pretty low mileage on it and it's in good shape. And so planning-wise, I would like to replace that vehicle. It doesn't work for us operationally, being that it's only an extended cab pickup truck. So we can't get all the personnel into it when we go on a dive response. So we would want to look at a four-door cab vehicle, four-wheel drive, et cetera. And then take that 1999 pickup truck and kind of slot it into where we were using that Ford Escape as a vehicle to run people to physicals, go to training classes, et cetera, or if we need to do work inside the township. And it would also give us a pickup truck vehicle, like when we go out on fires in the winter and the hose gets frozen to the ground, you can't roll it. We need something to basically throw it in the back of a truck to get it back to the station to thaw it and then clean it. And it would serve that utility purpose for us. It's in good condition. We can get more life out of it. And that's my succession plan for that vehicle, basically. But we're going to have to buy a vehicle to replace that. And that's where I'm looking at for next year.
Okay.
But could we use the ARPA money to buy that vehicle next year?
Yeah,
Truck.
my plan is not to use any of that money for the time being. Let's see how all of what we've dedicated washes out. And I'm earmarked for reimbursement for part of that fire truck.
Right.
It's part of it, yeah.
Well, and it doesn't matter to me how the money flows as long as
Right.
when I come to you all and say, hey, we recognize that we encumbered virtually all of our vehicle replacement fund because we had to, and I need a supplement to make up that difference because I need to purchase these vehicles as long as you all are open to that conversation that we're having right now.
Okay.
Does that sound agreeable?
Sure.
Yep.
I wondered if it needed to be in the resolution, because I know we had that agreement.
Right.
But if it doesn't.
But the question right now is how much? We don't know. It's
Well, in my mind, it doesn't matter if we add money to the ladder truck or if we buy an extended cab four-door vehicle, you're still spending the money.
Right.
It's where's the money going to go?
exactly.
Yeah,
we care about is
and the only part it does for us as far as planning purposes is I knew as long as we got through this evening that I had $400,000 in change left in my vehicle replacement plan to look at what can I purchase. Because we would look at the new dive truck. We've been talking about a new boat for a number of years, and those are two things that are on my immediate radar. And those would be projects that I would like to pursue for next year for 2023. And so I don't have the dollar amount that's sitting in the bank that I had planned on.
Yeah.
And as long as that's not an obstacle when I come to you all to present possible purchases, then I'm okay with it.
Okay.
So,
Very good. Thank
okay.
you.
And then basically, I think all we need is the
Yep. Another motion.
final resolution.
Yep.
I need to call roll on the appropriation.
Okay.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. All right, I'll do
Thank you.
the next one. I'll move to approve a purchase order to Sutphen Corporation in the amount of $1,674,213 for a Sutphen SPH 100 aerial ladder. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
And that's a state bid item, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Roll call?
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one other item, if you would indulge me,
Yep.
just a few minutes. Wanted to take a moment to address while we're in public session, a comment that was made during your meeting on Monday evening regarding residential fire sprinklers. And the comment was made that sprinklers save structures, that they don't save lives. And I feel that I have an obligation to respond to that statement as the fire chief of the township. Fire sprinklers do save lives, period. Typically, when discussing fire sprinkler protection, the issue is raised whether a residential sprinkler system is a life safety system or is it designed for property protection. When we address that issue, it must be pointed out that the design criteria of the sprinkler system is established to prevent the flashover, which is the total combustion of all the combustible materials in a specified room or area. When that is sprinklered and to improve, so basically what that does is it improves the chances for the occupants to escape said area or to be evacuated by fire personnel. And therefore must be considered a life safety system. A benefit of the system is that it is being designed to prevent the total flashover of the room of origin. The system will reduce the property damage resulting from the fire. So there is a savings to the structure because of the sprinkler system being already inside of the residential structure. When home fires occur, they are more dangerous than ever. Today, we see that. The widespread use of lightweight construction and synthetic materials in modern homes has fires burning hotter and faster than ever, leaving people today with as little as 2 minutes to evacuate a structure when they're notified that there is a fire inside of their residence. Data from the National Fire Administration and the National Fire Protection Association shows that working residential fire sprinklers control fires 96% of the time when they're present, and people are 81% less likely to die in a home fire, and property damage is reduced by about 70% when there's a residential sprinkler system installed in the home. The record for automatic fire sprinklers is based on the simple fact that there has never been multiple deaths, which is more than 3, of building occupants from a fire developing in a building that is protected by an automatic fire sprinkler system that is properly installed, maintained in accordance with nationally recognized standards. So in essence, the system that was talked about and the comment was made about was a residential sprinkler system which falls under NFPA code, what's called 13D. And basically, when you look at that fire code, it regulates the residential home sprinklers and is considered a life safety standard as it focuses on protecting life and then property. And I just wanted to clarify that point. I didn't want that comment hanging out there that they don't save lives, because they truly do. If the concept would not be put in place to put a sprinkler inside of a home to merely protect the home, it's to protect the occupants of the home. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Human Resources with Linda Greco.
Good evening, everybody. I only have one item tonight. It is to ask the board for a motion to amend the reimbursement agreements for both police and fire. This was something that the board had asked me to do to keep in line with the new CDL reimbursement agreement that we currently have. The only change that was made was the last paragraph, and that would be the method of repayment. The new method would just simply make it a cleaner issue for us and also for the employees. We wouldn't have to deal with the retirement systems, OPERS and OPNF. So at this time, I'd like to ask for the motion to amend the reimbursement agreements for both police and fire.
I don't
You
have,
one,
I don't have,
You don't, I'm sorry. you
that's
don't
all
have
right.
one.
That's
Oh.
okay. That's no problem. I will move to pass a motion to approve the police and fire repayment agreement as presented.
Is that approve or amend?
We want to amend it.
We're amending, aren't it?
We
So
have-
move
we-
to
we have-
amend.
Who has the minutes from August 4th? I passed them around
Oh,
to
yeah.
get signed.
Did we sign? You know what? They might still be here. I have them.
You have them? Okay.
August 4th, yes. They in here? I have my glasses. What are we looking for?
Linda, are you talking about the CDL policy and the CDL incentive repayment agreement that was approved?
No, this is the police and fire reimbursement
Similar, though.
agreements.
Okay, where does this agreement lie with the fleet, with the fire, Joe? What do you mean, where does it lie? Is it in, like, policy?
It's policy?
It's personnel policy. It is in the personnel policy manual.
It's our
Sorry.
departmental policy.
Okay,
That was instituted.
okay, so it's in the
It's in the
personnel.
personnel policy manual, correct. It's not their
Okay,
department's manuals.
okay. Yeah, I would just say,
So it's amend or approve?
I would say amend.
So I'm going to revise my motion and move to amend the police and fire repayment agreement as presented. Is that better?
I'll second that.
Thank
one.
you. Now that we got it straight. All right, discussion. I have a few questions. And I'm going to ask each department for this. Materials for fire, what does that include?
Basically, what we look at under our reimbursement agreement is we look at the cost that is involved in bringing an employee on board. So we look at the cost of, if needed, the pension physical, background investigation, psychological testing, uniforms and/or associated turnout gear, the protective turnout gear. And basically, you know, it's just if we were to have an employee depart within that 2-year window, is to try to recoup some of the money that we spent on bringing that employee on board. It is rather expensive.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
yes. And then police, what would be expenses? What type of?
Same as fire, basically, and it's all percentage-based.
So uniforms,
Percentage of the uniforms, the background, psychological polygraph, the whole hiring process, costs of the hiring process.
they have turnout gear. Do you have any other equipment that they're required to purchase?
Uniforms, duty belt, guns, there's a lot of different equipment we supply.
Okay, and they purchase or you purchase?
We purchase all their equipment by contract.
Okay. All right, and who is responsible for this policy? Making sure that you get your reimbursements? Who takes care of this? If somebody doesn't last the 2 years?
We in the past, I know, have worked with HR and to get the money reimbursed. I know there's, I believe there's an attorney opinion, you can't take it out of their residual vacation checks or anything like that, so it's incumbent on the township at some point to work with the person. If the person fails to pay, then we would have to take civil action against them.
So your department takes care of this?
We would work with HR to make sure it gets done, yes.
Okay.
And we have done so in the past.
Is that what you do?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Linda, what's your role in this?
The department gathers all of the information, documents it. They discuss with the employee how the method of payback, and also if there's any scheduling of repayment, if it's a hardship for the employee. So they do all of that. If they accept payment of any kind, that too, but also they send all of that to me, and I actually facilitate the rest of it. So I will discuss with Donna, we decide how everything is done. If there's a repayment schedule, we make sure we're good with that, and then I make sure everything is put into folders,
Okay,
filed, so that we have it on hand.
okay. Anyone else? No? All right. Did I get a second? Yes. All right, roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. I don't know, Linda. All right, yes, next, please.
Good evening. The first item is to request approval for a purchase order of $10,600 for Larry Dorn Associates to pour concrete around the flagpole in front of the station on the southwest portion. It's about 500 square feet. This would come from our bond money. We want to get it done now before winter. Also, it's getting increasingly more difficult to get concrete.
Okay. I'll move to approve the following purchase orders to Larry Dorr and Associates in the amount of $10,600 for concrete for the flagpole at the police station. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Again, the next item is another improvement to the station from our police bond fund. It's to request approval for a purchase order with McCoy Paving not to exceed $20,000. This is to extend the blacktop paving on the east side of the station, to extend access to the Sally Port and also add parking spaces. It's an area of about 25 by 160 feet, as you can see behind you there, what our current parking is. It'll add approximately 16 extra spaces. Also provides the ability for tow truck access when they have to tow vehicles in. Right now, they can't back in because of the mud. And Bob's going to work with us, I think, to lay the base and everything. So you can talk more about it.
Yeah, I just want to, you want to do a blanket, you don't want to made out the McCoy, because that cost is for asphalt from Middle Ohio and everything.
Okay, I stand corrected, whatever Bob said.
Blanket, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, the one I had the
Donna
koi
covered
on
your
there.
back there.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes, we are planning to do the base, and it should be in time, because I'm also hauling grindings to that
Oh, perfect.
for the base.
Great. It's a win-win. All right, I'll move to approve a blanket purchase order in the amount of $20,000 for our parking lot extension at the police station. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Roll call, Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Next item, Sergeant Emily Brees is requesting course approval to pursue her bachelor's degree in workplace leadership at Tiffin University. The approval is required by the union contract that the trustees approve the coursework, and then later on afterwards, she's allowed to put in for her tuition reimbursement, which she can get not to exceed $6,000 per year based on her grades.
Okay, I'll move to approve the tuition reimbursement for police officer Emily Brees for a bachelor's degree in workplace leadership from Tiffin University per Article 15 tuition reimbursement in the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association Union Agreement. Reimbursement will be based on final grades. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Also, I'm kind of remiss because the deputy chief worked hard to show you the area where we're extending the parking lot there. So he put it together, a nice little drone video.
Faulty mouse, so I'm doing my very best, but you can see the cursor darting around here. I'm going to try to get it to it's at the 3-second mark, but it's this area behind the building. You can see. Right here? Yeah, so, sorry, because this mouse is obviously having fun. So it's going to be from here to this location.
Oh, wow.
Here, where the parking lot comes over. So that is where the
big.
asphalt will be. And it gives us an area currently, if we have a seized stolen vehicle, for example, we have to process. We now have to put it in an area where some weather can get to it, instead of what this was built and designed for, a location to put seized property. So that will allow the tow truck to swing out and get in there. And it also gives us 16 possible spaces that we can use as overflow if we have a big training or a big event at the PD.
Okay, next is a requested acceptance of the service retirement for Officer Shane Fry. Shane came to us in 2007 with prior law enforcement experience in Delaware and Moore County, so he's got a total of 25 years of service. Shane has served the township and department faithfully since 2007 and will be greatly missed by all of us in the police department. It's a big loss to us, but we wish him the best for a happy retirement.
Very good. I'll move to accept the retirement of full-time police officer Shane Fry effective September 30th, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? I want to thank him for his service and dedication to Genoa Township.
Absolutely.
Roll call?
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antoinette? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Next is, we have received a letter of resignation from Officer Andrew Bynorth, effective yesterday, August 31st. Officer Bynorth was in his field training program at the time that he submitted his resignation.
Okay, I'll move to accept the resignation of full-time police officer Andrew Bynorth effective August 31st, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Goodman? Yes. Mr. Antoinette? Yes. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
And since Chief Ponzi discussed public safety vehicles tonight, I was going to mention that, just give you advance notice, in October, I'm going to come to you asking for some cruiser purchases. We have a vehicle replacement schedule that typically calls for replacing 2 cruisers per year. We're going to be asking to replace 4 next year for the reason that it's getting more and more difficult to find manufacturers. Chevy has stopped making police vehicles. Ford is pretty much the only game in town. And even with ordering them, there's a limited amount that they produce, and it can take a long time, up to a year or more, to get the vehicles. We're in a position now where they have a short window where you can order the vehicles, which is now. And by the time I come to you in October, that window is going to be closed, so if we don't order the vehicles now, we're not going to have any vehicles coming in next year. So I'm going to be asking to replace 4 cruisers next year. We do have the money that we can move into our capital fund from our pooled balance, so that's not an issue. As well as in October, I'm going to be asking for approval to replace my vehicle and the deputy chief's vehicle. Both of those cars are 8 years old, which exceeds our vehicle replacement schedule. His has close to 100,000 miles on it. Mine has 77,000 miles on it, and both are starting to increase in maintenance. So just a little heads up, I'm going to be coming there, but I also want to let you know that I pretty much have to order those 4 cruisers now, or we're not going to be able to get anything next year. So unless there's some strong objection, I'm going to proceed that way.
Okay, thank you for the heads up.
Okay. The other thing I did want to mention, give you an update on our therapy dog program, because we've talked about it. Officer Berner, the Rocky's handler, had an off-duty injury that required surgery, so he's still on light duty, so he's not been in the middle school. Hopefully, we'll get him there at the end of the month. We've worked with Westerville Schools, and we've got everything in place for him to start there once he's ready, and they'll put out some announcements. But I did want to mention, while Officer Berner's on light duty in the station, Rocky's in there with him, and he's already worked with citizens that have come in the station. We had someone in there the other day that was very, very distraught, and Rocky walked right up to this individual and put his head right on her lap. And it really helped calm her down. So even while on light duty, he's still benefit not only internally with me and the other officers in the station, but as the public comes in. So that seems to be working very, very well.
Very good.
And he did have a public appearance last night
Yes.
at the Clippers game. I saw him there at it was a
First responder.
First
night.
Responders
that's
Night. So
great.
Rocky is everywhere.
I know I walked in last week or the week before, and Lynn was babysitting, and he climbed right up on the counter and said hello.
He's a cutie. Anything else? Otherwise, I'm done.
No,
All right, thank you.
thank you. All right, anyone else before I close out? Announcements, September 5th, offices are closed for Labor Day. September 6th, Fire Advisory Committee. September 7th, Parks Advisory Committee. September 12th, Zoning Commission. September 14th, Police Advisory Committee. September 17th, Fishing Day. September 27th, BZA. October 4th, Fire Advisory Committee. October 5th, Parks Advisory Committee. The next regular trustee meeting is October 6th, 2022. At this time, I'll move to adjourn to executive session at 8:13 PM to consider the appointment, employment, promotion, or compensation of a public employee. Do I have a second?
Second,
And
Roll call, Ms. Goodman.
yes.
Mr. Antoinette.
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn.
yes, motion carries. At this time, we're adjourned to executive session. Mike. Okay. At this time, I'll move to return from executive session to the regular trustee meeting at 9:10 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
And for the record, I'd like to announce that our Administrator Paul Wise, Linda Greco from Human Resources, Bob Matthews from Maintenance, Chief Joe Ponzi from Fire was here in executive session. I do have one, yes, go ahead.
Do we need roll call?
We need to
for
come
back
back.
Oh,
to
yes, sorry.
come Out of exec?
Roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. I do have one agenda item coming out of executive session. I'd like to move to amend the Genoa Township CDL policy effective April 15th, 2022, and the CDL incentive repayment agreement effective August 4th, 2022, as presented. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you. Roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonez? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. There's no more business before the board, so at this time, I'll move to adjourn this meeting at 9:11 PM. Do I have a second?
Second?
Roll call?
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Antonez?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. We're adjourned at 9:11.